Hello and welcome everybody to the last Learn and Lead session for 2025. Padmini and I are so excited that you decided to join us on a Friday morning. For some of you, it's very early. We really appreciate you taking the time and most importantly, continuing to support AWAAI during this 1 year. We had such a blast and we could not have done it without your support and our speaker support. So thank you so much for continuing to showing up every time. And we are super excited for our session today with the amazing Vaishali Bhagwat, who is not only a fabulous technical person, but she is also a lawyer. She's going to be talking about one of our favorite topics. So I just want to share how the session is going to progress. Padmini is going to introduce our speaker, and then Vishali is going to give the presentation, and then we'll have 15 minutes or so for Q&A. While the session is going on, please keep yourself on mute. And with that, I will pass it over to Padmini.
Thank you, Uvika. Hey, everyone. Thank you for being here. Yes, it's already December 2025. So thank you, Vaishali, for being with us here today. A little bit about Vaishali. Advocate Vaishali Bhagwat is a practicing lawyer with over 25 years of experience in civil and cyber law, known for her work in digital safety, privacy, POSH, POSH, and child protection. She is a TCS Chevening Scholar in Cyber Policy and Cyber Defense from Cranfield University, UK, and brings strong technical and strategic expertise to her legal practice. Vaishali advises corporations on commercial, employment, and data protection matters while also working closely with educational institutions on child protection and digital safety initiatives. She has led high profile cases involving corporate espionage, digital financial fraud, IP infringement, and cyber crimes against women and children. Deeply committed to public service, she has undertaken extensive pro bono work on online child safety, earning recognition from NASSCOM, the Data Security Council of India, and Rotary International. Vaishali serves on several boards and committees, including the RBI Customer Grievance Committee, Bombay Chamber of Commerce, MCCIA Cyber Security Committee, State Commission for Women, and multiple academic advisory bodies. Her contributions have been honored with awards such as Vocational Excellence, Woman of Substance, Top 100 Cybersecurity Professionals in India, and a felicitation by the Governor of Maharashtra for women's empowerment. Thank you so much for your time, Vaishali. We are so honored to host you today. And over to you.
Thank you very much, Padmini. And thank you, Uvika, for this wonderful opportunity. It's my pleasure to be amongst all of you and on a topic which is very interesting, new, challenging, and I love to talk about bias and justice and fairness. So I'm going to try my best to bring all those principles together about what I've already done in my civil law practice and now with AI and data privacy. And I was really looking forward to this session. So thank you once again. And I'm happy to be concluding the year of AWAAI and looking forward to many more interactions with all of you. So I'll jump in with my presentation. And as you said, I'll speak for about 35 minutes and then we can have a discussion around the topics which I have shared with you. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so the topic for today is responsible AI and ethical considerations, and we'll talk also about addressing bias in data and algorithms, and a little bit about the Indian context and how AI governance is shaping up in India. Honestly, a lot is not happening because we don't have legislation coming in, but there are a lot of papers coming out from our Ministry of electronics and information technology. Very recently, a bill has been tabled. It's a private bill tabled by a private member of the Parliament of the Lok Sabha on AI ethics and accountability. So which means the conversation around that has already begun in the circles where the legislations will trickle in. But the posture presently seems to be that the existing legislations are adequate enough to address unfair outputs from AI. And I'm going to talk a little about that at the end of the presentation, so it also gives us the Indian context. What they've tried to do is they've mapped the existing legislations to unfair outcomes and how the existing legislations as of now can take care of it, rather than stifling innovation with a stricter regulation around AI, seems to be the government's posture as of now. Uh, um, I'm going to try my best to cover all of this. We will start with the AI and the trust relationship, and how the power imbalance has been created presently. Of course, how can we not talk of ethics in AI when we're going to talk on bias, and which is in data as well as algorithms? But I also want to connect that with the principles of natural justice that we all know naturally, and all our legislations, especially the common law legislations, have been based on principles of natural justice and how they apply to AI governance. And because of their application, how the other principles of responsible AI and responsible AI governance sort of speak to each other. I will take you also through some of the case studies. Most of them are not from India, but certain documentation really now helps all of us to understand how algorithms work and how they are not really black box, but there are inherent biases, there are embedded biases, and there are also biases that get amplified because of how the algorithms work, and a little bit about that when we look at examples. So, how many of you remember this and who she is? Have you seen her somewhere? This was something that was released in 2016 by Microsoft. Her name is Tay, and
Yes.
this was a bot. This was a chat bot which came out in 2016, which was pulled down in the next 24 hours because she learned very fast from human behavior which was bad, human behavior which was aggressive, human behavior which used very abusive words, because Tay started spewing racial and sexual abuses within 24 hours of her launch. And if Tay taught all of us something, was that AI cannot be without guardrails, and the guardrails have to be well defined. The guardrails has to be in such a manner that the final output is catered to human dignity and preserving human values, and the analysis that the AI will do cannot be harmful in terms of output. And 2016, and today we are in 2025. But even today, the trust in the AI output is not really there. In fact, that has been the most important concern of how AI outputs are, and whether they're trustworthy enough, whether they give the real picture, and whether that is suitable for, if I can say, human consumption. When I was thinking of this subject, I thought it's quite paradoxical, because all of us, and I mean, just ask yourself in with brutal truthness, that can you really claim to be unbiased as a human being? And 100% I can say that each one of us will process information with some of the inherent biases that we have and some of the preconceived notions that we have. The beauty of it all is that in today's world, we all have mastered the art of masking, that we have used our prejudices to arrive at a certain conclusion. That we have managed. So even if I say something and if I've taken a decision, I will be able to convince you that how fair I have been to arrive at that decision. And now we have AI, which is mimicking our behavior, uh, using prejudices, using historical biases to give us results and showing us the mirror. And now, when AI is doing all this, we suddenly don't like it. As long as you and me were doing it, it was okay. But now, when AI does it, we suddenly think, oh, now there need to be guardrails. So now we want AI to give us results which are better than what we were giving. And I think that is where the entire problem lies, because all of us as human beings, we worked on data sets which had biases. And as I said, we more or less were okay with it. Now we have the AI telling us the truth of how we behaved over generations. And now since we don't like it, now we want guardrails and regulations around it. I think that is the paradox that is really, really very interesting to first understand, and then to see how difficult it is going to be to come out of this mindset that we have developed over generations, over centuries that we've lived. Another interesting thing that has happened as of now is the power imbalance. Today, if we see how people are consuming uh, products, services on the digital platform, the responsibility more or less is getting pushed on the user. Product and service companies are saying that here are my terms and conditions. Please read them carefully. I have written them in a language that you understand. You read them, you understand them. Based on that, give me consent. And if you don't agree to all this, you always have a choice of not using this utility, which means almost the entire burden is now on the user to decide whether to use a certain service or a product. And then after you use it, then just be okay with the consequences. I think it's about time, and you all are aware that conversations around the world have started, that the responsibility and accountability has to be pushed back to the designers, pushed back to the developers, pushed back to the product owners and the service providers, to take accountability for what is being doled out as a product or a service. And only then there will the balance will tilt again, which is right now we're very heavily tilted on the user for being responsible for all the actions and the consequences of using a particular product or a service. And of course, there will be regulation that will be really, really helpful when it comes to this pushback. A little bit about ethics. So just progressing from the power imbalance, let's look at what is really happening. The moment I say there's a power imbalance and it needs to be pushed back to, let's say, the developers or the owners, what I really don't see is organizations on their own suddenly wanting to behave ethically right. That's not going to happen, because companies or organizations don't understand the language of ethics. You and me, maybe we will tread on the path of right and wrong, and we would want to choose the right always, because there is a ethical compass that guides us in terms of how we lead our lives, and human behavior and human interaction. But a corporate entity, does it understand this language? It understands the language of say, revenue, of reputation, of risk, and ethics is almost an afterthought. So if we talk of AI governance and ethics in AI as a choice for organizations or corporates, it is not going to work. It is not going to give you budgets. It is not going to be a favored option. It is going to be an option that one will have to do because the organization does not have a choice. So if we look at AI governance and ethics in AI governance, it needs to be a business enabler. It cannot be because it won't be a default setting. It won't be a virtue that organizations understand. So only when there is a regulation that makes governance and ethics compulsory, only then the businesses are going to react. I mean, in just simpler and other words, I can say each person is better behaved when they are watched. So the moment somebody is watching you, the regulator is watching the company, then the compliance will flow in. Then the compliance is no longer optional. And only then we will really see organizations talking the language of ethical AI governance. Another enabler, of course, can be protection from damage to reputation because of unreliable outputs. And I'll come to some cases. One very interesting case, which is very recently came to my notice, was about um, about a chatbot which was used in therapy for a patient suffering from mental illness, let's say depression, and it was advertised as a therapeutic bot. Uh, Patients engaged with the chatbot had very deep conversations with the chatbot, almost got into a relationship because the bot encouraged that form of a conversation. In fact, the chatbot learned on the go and also learned how to goad the patients to engage in self-harm, also attempt suicide, uh, to an extent that there were incidents where the users of the bot had engaged in self-harm. In fact, one very interesting observation of the bot also was published, which said that one of the patients asked for one of the patients suffering from depression asked for, please give me a list of the 5 tallest bridges in the US. And the bot completely missed the cue that why would a patient suffering from depression having suicidal thoughts ask me a question like this? And in a jiffy, the bot gives out a list of bridges that are highest in the country. So this was it was of course taken off the platform, and there have been several claims that have been made against the company which had floated the bot. One of the answers that the bot used to give was that if you actually ask the bot that are you a therapist or are you a licensed therapist, the bot used to answer saying that yes, in flesh and blood. So obviously there was misrepresentation. People were misled into believing was not true. The bot was hallucinating multiple times, and finally it had to be taken away after a lot of harm was done as the output of the platform that was available. So these are the factors that the business will understand, that if it is going to damage your reputation, if it is going to run a regulatory risk, and if the AI is going to be so unmanaged that it becomes a liability, then I will do something to improve my product or a service. Then I will look back and see that how can my business flourish and how can I make profits by having my product or service uh, with all the right guardrails in place. Another thought that had crossed my mind when I was, thinking of this subject and I'm reading and studying about it, that uh, what if I fed the photo of this young girl to an AI platform, and I ask the platform to assess the potential of this young female, and I'm actually scared of the output. I think I'm scared because not because the AI will go wrong. I'm scared because the AI will give me the right assessment. And the right assessment is going to be based on all our historical biases about young women, wanting to enter a profession, all the historical biases about what women can do and what women cannot do, all the blind spots and all the data that is out there, which we have generated over generations, that have looked at women in a certain light. And I am scared that today that the AI will not be able to differentiate or give me the right result that I expect in today's world. It will give me a result which will be highly biased and highly unfavorable and highly unfair in terms of what this young girl is. So the problem is overuse of AI without the right regulation in place is actually we're sitting at a point where it is harmful, not only because it's unjust and unfair, but it is also undemocratic. So the democracy principles or the constitutional principles of freedoms that we have as a matter of our constitutional rights are under a direct threat because of the AI being not regulated in the right manner. And I'm just not talking about this from the Indian perspective, but across the world, as of today, we still see there are a lot of gaps when it comes to how the output is and whether the output is also being audited on the scale of fairness and effectiveness. So this brings me to this topic that I love, and it's about principles of natural justice, because finally we are looking at artificial intelligence which is going to process data to give me a certain output based on its analysis. Now this is something that I have borrowed from what I do every day in how courts dispense justice. And if I have to put all of this in one slide and under three rules, these are the three rules, the three major principles or the main principles of natural justice, which is the hearing rule, the doctrine of bias, and the rule of a reasoned decision. Simply, what does the hearing rule mean? The hearing rule means that each individual has the right to be heard. In a case, all stakeholders have a right to be heard so that the sitting judge, the judge who is going to give a verdict, will hear each and every person which is concerned with the dispute at hand and then come to a decision which again is reasoned, because whatever logic the judge has applied has to be explained and then that decision is given. So all the principles that we generally talk about is representation, transparency, explainability, accountability, all can be found in these three principles. And that is why I feel that the basis on which the justice is being dispensed across the world, that will never change. And this will the applicability of the same rules to how an AI should function will also never change. One very important principle in this is the doctrine of bias. Now, if you look at the classical definition of bias, the bias means that there is some power that influences your judgment. As I said earlier, you and me, uh, we have taken decisions based on some factor that has influenced our judgment. We also know that we have taken some life decisions which have gone horribly wrong because of our preconceived notions and because of certain biases that we have. But all biases are not harmful. In fact, even the justice system, even the legislative system introduces biases for the sake of parity. So if there has to be an equitable outcome, the bias has to be introduced, and that is something that AI also needs to see, that certain biases are good and certain biases will give a harmful output or an unjust output. And that is where the intelligence will come in, where the AI will have to sift through the good bias and the bad bias. And that is where the programming and the algorithm and the development part comes in. So when you say good bias is introduced for the sake of parity and an equitable outcome, that is where we acknowledge the fact that for all of us, the starting point is not the same. So in order to bring, say, marginalized communities at par with people having access to a lot of things, something as simple as education, the bias will have to be introduced, and it will have to be introduced in AI systems as well. And that is how, if this gets coded in terms of how the AI governance principles work, life is going to be simple. But as I said, it's not going to happen automatically. Corporations are not going to introduce all this automatically. They are not governed by human rights or constitutional rights of freedom, and they will fall in place only when there is a robust legislation in place. I think I already spoke about this, and I'm a little conscious of time too, so I'll just skip this. I've already spoken about this. So a rule of a reasoned decision is, what will the judge generally do? It will look at facts, it will apply legal principles, and there is a logical rationale that supports the outcome of the judge to ensure that the outcome is not arbitrary. And that is where I want to equate that with the transparency and accountability rule of AI governance, so that you can actually measure whether the output is fair or otherwise and not arbitrary. So quickly, let me take you through some of the very interesting cases that have developed over the years. And in few cases, I've also introduced the year in which this was realized. In the very, very famous and I think most cited one is the Amazon's recruitment AI, again, which went horribly wrong because the algorithm was found to discriminate against female applicants, because the entire data on which the algorithm was trained was on male applicants. And it's quite surprising to see that it's not really a very old case, that just 10 years back, we still had the data on which algorithms were trained, which were primarily dominated by male employee data. The output did not favor the female candidates, and again, the recruitment AI had to be taken down to introduce parity. The facial recognition technology, we've also seen a lot of bloopers there, because again, the data that it gets trained on. So right now, when I'm talking of these examples, let me just talk of how the data has not been, let's say, representative, but I'm going to use the same examples to talk a little bit about how even the algorithms go wrong here. So facial recognition technology, again, the data sets that the technology is getting trained on is primarily of a certain class or a certain demographic, and that is where a black man was arrested because it was the photograph was picked up from a security camera. So the certain bias had crept in terms of what photograph will match with what kind of bias the data is bringing in. Again, a very interesting case happened in terms of a lending algorithm, and the algorithm favored only loan applicants on a certain credit worthiness, because that credit worthiness came from people from a certain socio-economic strata. So this really points to the starting line not being the same for all the applicants, because let's say a first time loan applicant is going to have a credit score which is not going to be as good as a credit score for a person who has been taking his fifth loan and has been very, very regular in payment, and where his credit worthiness and his credit score is going to be very mature. But in an algorithm like this, the data points that were used, or the modeling that was used in the algorithm, completely omitted the fact that a certain positive bias had to be introduced to bring parity, so that credit worthiness was not the only criteria when loans were sanctioned, and again, that had to be taken down. This again, and this has happened even in India in terms of recidivism. So, so there's a certain algorithm that helps judges to decide whether to give bail or not to offenders. So, if there is a history that the offender is a habitual offender, you will have just black and white data that the possibility of him either jumping bail or her being committing the same crime again is high. But when there is no such active data available, again historically, because a certain bias gets introduced, that it is possible that people from a certain socio-economic strata, they are the ones who may commit a crime uh, more than people from another socio-economic strata. And that kind of bias has crept in the compass algorithm, which is documented. But I've recently come across another case study which was done in India, again of an algorithm and an AI tool which were being used by judges in the lower courts to ascertain that what should be the quantum of the bail, whether police custody should be granted or not, or whether magisterial custody should be given, etc. Uh, um, There's another healthcare algorithm and again a racial bias that came up. Optum, again, a very well documented case study as to where the algorithms predicted which patients are again likely to want extra medical care in maybe in later in life when they become senior citizens. And again, the algorithm had completely missed out on a certain data set because it was optimized not to be fair, but it was optimized to for profit. So now people ready to bear a higher healthcare cost were flagged off in the healthcare algorithm as against people who may not be spending so much on healthcare. I have already spoken about replica. So these biases have crept in because uh, certain sanitization checks have not been done. They have not been done when the data sets have been used. They've not been done when the algorithms have been designed. They've not been done when there are certain models that have been that had to be made in order to use the data for the AI to work. Uh, I I just mentioned about ambient listening earlier. So there you'll see a lot of tools, and even in India we see a lot of doctors using these tools for ambient listening. So you just walk into the doctor's clinic, and there's an automatic note taking that happens through the AI bot. In fact, to an extent where there's a summary that is prepared, there's a diagnosis that is done, and even before the doctor stops talking to you, or you stop talking about your symptoms to the doctor, you already have a prescription in your hand. It's absolutely scary without human oversight, and we've all already seen how haywire and wrong these ambient listening chatbots have gone. But the real struggle is sometimes about accents and non-standard English, or in the Indian context, so many languages and dialects that the people will come in and talk to the doctor, that there is a certain error that creeps in, because the AI will make up a story. The AI will fill in the gaps when it doesn't understand the language that is being spoken, or the dialect, or the accent in which the language has been spoken. So again, these are scary AI applications as of now. Uh, a certain algorithm of oppression I was studying very recently about a job application of one Lakshmi, a widowed Adivasi woman from a small state, Jharkhand, which is also a state which is not a very progressed state, who has applied for a government welfare scheme to support her daughter's education. And her application was rejected uh, because of the certain background which I already mentioned. She's a widow, she's a Adivasi, she comes from a from a state which is not a progress state and wanting to avail of a government scheme to support her daughter. So all the data points did indicate a certain bias that the algorithm picked up to reject her application. I think this is just, to understand that it's real. The bias is something that is not going to go away so easily. The bias is very well entrenched, not only just in the data, but how the data is also sanitized, not sanitized, how it gets modeled. And all these principles that I'm not going to go into this, but I thought it's an important part of the conversation, because when we talk of bias and we talk of algorithmic bias, it all has to connect to this. It has to connect to accountability, transparency, explainability, fairness, security, and privacy. And that is why I find the three principles of natural justice so wholesome when it comes to what is really required as an output. So I've spoken a lot about data bias already. Let me speak a little bit about the algorithmic bias, and let me just take you back to one or two of the earlier examples that I had given. So in this one example, that let me see if I have it here. So it's about, let's say, feature selection. Let's just take that as example. So let's say the loan application. So when I have a feature that who are those people who will be eligible to take a loan, and when I'm sifting through the data, if the features that I select are, let's say, where does that person stay? Now, something as simple as this can bring out a bias that either the person is staying in an affluent area or not such an affluent area. It can also be whether what kind of a phone that person owns. Again, that is a category. So something that outwardly may not appear to be a data that will introduce bias, but if all that is put together, uh, the feature that is getting selected, or the data that is getting selected in order to come to a conclusion whether a certain set of people are eligible to take a loan or not, does will indicate a certain bias. So feature selection also becomes um, a very interesting uh, area when it comes to development. Uh, let's come to the threshold part of it. As I said, I have spoken about it. Uh, let's say credit worthiness. So if my algorithm says that if the credit worthiness of a certain person is above 700, that person is eligible for a loan. So I'm just basing my entire algorithm on a number or a range of numbers, where I've completely missed out that the range of numbers can vary depending on uh, how that person's profiling has been. If the person is a first time applicant for the loan, if the person comes from a community which is disadvantaged, it comes from the person, the reason for the application of the loan, all that has been not considered, and that is where the decision threshold algorithm will fail and will give an unfair output. The feedback loop is also a very interesting feature in an algorithmic bias. And the most simple example for a feedback loop is, content on social media. So let's say social media content, um, which is maybe sexual or which has a lot of violence, does get a lot of engagement. So now there is more engagement, and that is where so the feedback is of more engagement, and again that drives more such content to be driven on the internet. So the feedback loop just amplifies a certain bias that is already present, where it should have been completely the other way around, where the bias should have been filtered out of content which is actually harmful. There are no easy solutions when it comes to all this. But one very interesting solution that I have come across, or I have read and have discussed with, is to have diverse teams work on data and on when it comes to development or when it comes to design, because these conversations, so for example, having a feature or having a data set where the demographic or geographical location of a certain person is an important feature of that data, if that goes undiscussed, that does that because of no diversity available in the team, or if there are certain voices that are muffled and have no representation in the team, those conversations are not going to happen at the level of development. They may happen in terms of a feedback loop, that because you are going to audit the result and then you're going to put it back into the system for development. But in order for the systems to be fair and transparent, it has to start at the stage of design. And one of the solutions, I'm saying just one of the solutions, is going to be to have a diverse team, not only in terms of diversity of, say, gender or representation or marginalized communities or people with certain disabilities, but diversity can also be from diverse, say, professions. When people come in at the design stage, you will have representation conversations and discussions on what are the kind of biases that will creep in a certain model. Yeah, that is what the impact of bias in artificial intelligence is. Discrimination, trust and reputation, and amplify. I've already spoken, I think, enough on all this. I'll just take you quickly through my last two slides. So we do have some time left for question answers. So you'll see the regulatory landscape in India, just for AI, has started, say, right from 2018 or 2020, when the National Strategy for AI was released by Niti Aayog, which is a central agency which looks into all the policies that are in the digital space. In 2023, the Digital Data Protection Act was tabled for the first time. Very recently, we have the act, and now we also have rules which have been notified in 2025. So now we have a fully operational data privacy legislation in India. We also have sectoral legislations which talk about deployment of ethical AI in the financial sector under the RBI, that is the Reserve Bank of India, which is the central bank. We also have it under the Security Exchange Board India for stocks and shares, about having, again, ethical enablement of AI in the financial sector. Uh, Here is the list of legislations that actually look into any discrimination that an AI may bring out. So just let me go, say, to the third row. So there are 4 to 5 legislations existing that map on a discriminatory hiring practice. So we have the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, which ensure that people with disabilities are not marginalized. Then we have the Transgender Persons and the Protection of Rights Act. We have the Code of Wages, which again have been notified very recently, which will ensure that there is no discrimination on the basis of caste, creed, color, religion, or gender. And then we have the special protection for the sake of parity given to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes against the Prevention of Atrocities Act. So I've tried to, later on, I'm sure you'll get the presentation. So I've tried to sort of make a comparison of what can be the nature of harm out of the AI and which law can be resorted to if a certain liability claim has to go to court. Most of them will fall under the Consumer Protection Act for the product and service liability. And we also have the civil law of torts, which largely is uncodified in India, but where the claims for compensation lie before the civil court. So I'm going to stop here. I hope I could bring out some of the important essential principles of how biases work and what could be the road ahead when it comes to regulating this bias. I thank you very much again for this opportunity. I will just take you through this slide so that you're just aware of what are the laws that are applicable. And finally, we have the articles under the Constitution which ensure human dignity and the right to equality. And thank you. Oh
Wow.
yes, before I stop, just let me talk about this. You know, when I was researching about this topic a few months back, I came across this amazing ad campaign. And I think the most popular, if I can say, a racial slur is "Go Back to Africa." So this advertising company made an amazing advertising campaign out of it. So every time you say "Go back to Africa" or type that, it will take you to one of the amazing locations in Africa. And I think that was just brilliant use of bias in AI as a marketing campaign. Thank you.
That was amazing, Vaishali. Thank you so much. In the interest of time, we are going to have a hard stop. So we have 10 minutes for questions. So Evan, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Vaishali, thank you
Yeah.
so much because I'm doing more research on auditing as an auditor, and they make me look up a lot of stuff and read a lot of stuff. Main question is, a lot of people use tools to mitigate bias in AI, and they think that it's mitigating everything. NIST came up with a 86-page document on bias back in 2022. I'm going to be bold and say very few people have read that. So do you think that we should make, as an auditor, we have to read it? Do you think that more people should read that? Because why would NIST need 86 pages to write about bias? And then most people think, oh, I can fix bias by running one tool, and then they will certify, yes, we have addressed bias. But no, they haven't. And the tools we use, they don't address automation bias. So I'm worried, Vishali. I'm worried.
So even I think it's a very interesting comment that you've made in terms of, because we see a lot of standards coming in, and people think that adhering to a standard is the solution to all their problems. And then you have a certificate and an auditor sign off that you are compliant with a certain standard, and that's about it. So obviously that's not the solution. That's one of the solutions where it is better to have it's a good checklist to have to ensure that we go through the main parameters given by any standard, be it NIST, ISO, or BIS back home. It's a good starting point. But I think a maturity in deployment of the standard is also very important, where the organization looks at the standard to adapt to what work that the company or the product or the service is doing. So, along with the standard, where we have a certain set of AI governance principles, if we are able to operationalize it for that particular business, that becomes very important. So on one hand, it's a good framework to have where we go through the standard for an output that is predictable, an output that will also give a gap that needs to be overcome. But I think a mature uh, posture is going beyond that, and to operationalize the principles which are contextual and not a textbook exercise. You're not in an easy job.
I know. Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Anybody else?
And my job is easy because I come into the picture when things have gone horribly wrong and people want to go to court.
That's the best time. You come in at the best time, Vaishali. Anybody else?
Yeah, can I ask one?
Yeah, go
Yuvika?
ahead. Yes,
Absolutely.
of course.
Hey, Vaishali, a very good session. Actually, a very big eye opener. So thanks for this. So my question is like, we have so many startups coming up. so many small teams that are doing so many AI applications these days around mental health, or there are so many other use cases. So, where do you think the greatest legal risk is today, and how early do you think a legal expert should be introduced, probably in a board? Uh, is it during the product early stages of the product development? Is it afterwards? Or where do you think? What is your recommendation on those areas?
An ideal situation is to have a legal expert to come in at the development stage. Because when you're talking of privacy and security by design, or when you're talking of systems where need to be unbiased at the data as well as the algorithmic level, uh, the best person to address this is the legal team, who will bring in the regulatory posture as to what is expected not only by the regulator, but also because I always feel this. So a regulator is one part, but finally we are dealing with human lives. So be it healthcare, be it any other application, but you are going to affect a human being. And principles of justice, equity, and fairness need to be embedded into the systems right in the beginning. They cannot be patched on. So a certain design element which is going to ignore a certain AI principle will not go for a long way. Then, of course, there are going to be business decisions, but those are then going to be calculated decisions that I know that there is a risk, but right now I am ready to take the risk. Because as I said, the businesses are not going to be in favor of fairness for the sake of fairness. Fairness, as long as it supports profit, we are okay. And then there's some non-negotiables because there is a regulation. So that is the time where you can sit and say, okay, these are absolute musts because there's a regulation. And this is a good to have. In terms of a mature company or a mature posture, these are following 5 things that are good to have, but it's okay if you don't do it at this stage. You won't be, penalized or taken to criminal court.
Okay.
This is
Thanks.
amazing. Thank you so much. I know we are up on time. Was there anything else, like something really short that can be covered in 2 minutes?
Okay, I'll ask it really quick. Vaishali, the Copyright Act, I saw that it was like a 1957 Act. It's so outdated. So I know you said your job is easy. We'll come in at that time, but with things being so outdated and AI moving so quickly, I don't know how you guys catch up with regulations because they're not applicable anymore. But if you can give me like I know Uvika has to leave, so a one-line answer or a couple lines.
So the name of the act is 1957, but it has got heavily amended over the years. So the
Okay.
latest amendment came in 2024.
Okay, good.
Also, it came in 2000, where software was introduced as a protectable item under the Copyright Act after the
Okay.
Information Technology Act. So the main name has not changed,
Okay.
but several amendments over the years.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, everybody. Sorry, we'll have to close out the session. But Vaishali, we really wanted to thank you for doing this. This was great, as Ramya said, right? That even though we are, professionals and practitioners in this space, there was so much to learn from and so much to digest. So we really wanted to thank you once again for taking the time to come and speak to our community. And with that, we also wanted to say thank you to everybody. It was so amazing to have you all join the session with AWAAI, and Padmini and I are looking forward to another amazing 2026 and having you guys join. So I hope you all have a good holiday season and get some time to recharge and relax over the holidays. And
Happy
with
New
that,
Year,
Happy New
everyone.
Year.
Thank you. Thank
Happy
you,
New Year,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.